channel.
You know what time it is, No Press Fam. Welcome everyone to another episode of The Beatdown, the segment where we take multitudes of characters from across many universes and have them battle it out. I am your gracious host, Class, and if you enjoy our content, share, like, subscribe, and become a No Press Fam member. We put out new episodes every week. Also, if you want to learn about origins or abilities, check out our playlist titled Brief Origins or BAF. With introduction said, let's get down to the beating. In this corner representing Marvel Comics, Man-Thing. Alright, so let's talk about the endgame. One of the things he has going for him is his slime-like body. Although it might appear not to have the most flashiest armor, it does have some incredible properties. For example, no weakness to exploit from any angle. Usually there's something on the body you can focus on to slow characters down. That isn't the case with Man-Thing. Tapping into minds to either read into fear or educate someone on powers does come in handy in a few ways. The fear one works on the level that Swamp Thing has particularly forgotten his past, and his history is a messed up one. Getting Swamp Thing to come to grips with his human loss of his body may mess up Swamp Thing's head, allowing Man-Thing some wiggle room to work with. Even though it is like a copy of his mind, still it would be a trip to find out that, oh, I'm a copy of my own subconscious and I no longer exist. I still would put somebody in a messed up head situation. The other is knowledge in the mind, as he can teach characters of unique gifts how to use them. There may be a possibility he can also make you lose what you learned about your powers. So that's interesting. If he has the power to tap into minds and teach others how to control them, and the argument could be made he might be able to erase it. What that means is that, let's say he accomplishes this feat, that would be during their encounter, let's say, Swamp Thing would have trouble remembering how to use his abilities, and that's when Man-Thing has time to shine. His fire isn't that of a traditional power. It's a fire that can harm anything and anyone. You could be made entirely out of the strongest metal material known to man or have ice-making abilities. Man-Thing will still be able to pierce your armor just with his touch alone. He may actually be able to do some serious harm to Swamp Thing, as he is entirely plant-based made or form. He can travel to other universes and change certain realities. On that note, he could prevent Swamp Thing's transformation or learn that weakness, what weakens him, or develop a weakness as he makes a few tweaks to alter Swamp Thing's history. There's a slight chance Swamp Thing might be able to prevent that, but it would require being able to read Man-Thing's moves, which is not easy to do. As you might be aware, Swamp Thing and Man-Thing rely on their swamps for the beast mode level power. If Man-Thing were to infect the swamp that the Swamp Thing was from, it would weaken Swamp Thing, granting Man-Thing a fighting chance in beating him. Wildcard, enough fear juice in the system and Swamp Thing doesn't stand a chance. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, it's simple. In the comics, there's a statement made where if Man-Thing were to gather all the fear from others around him, he could potentially become his own supernova. Now, a supernova energy is something you don't want to play with when it comes to a battle, but if Man-Thing pulls it off, Swamp Thing doesn't stand a chance against a supernova blast. He might survive the blast, but he would still technically be KO'd, since he'd definitely be out cold and therefore unable to continue the fight. So, with all that said, I think Man-Thing has this in the bag. Alright, now in this corner representing DC Comics, Swamp Thing. Alright, let's talk about the endgame. Between the two, Man-Thing has been known to be slower than him, making his attack moves much more efficient and time to nail them. But let's say, it's like, so you want to be, if you're the fastest in the ring, in certain times, and you can hit as hard. That is actually beneficial because if you're slower, it's harder to nail those moves. With Swamp Thing, that's not the case. Keep Man-Thing away from the swamp. So yeah, so like, you know, obviously Man-Thing can use his swamp, Swamp Thing can use his swamp, but let's go with this one. Keep Man-Thing away from the swamp. A long battle where Swamp Thing drags it out and manages to move the location elsewhere, and Man-Thing is in trouble. The longer away from his swamp, the weaker he gets, allowing Swamp Thing an opportunity. Also, you can't get rid of him. He survived the Anti-Monitor's wipeout wave. Clearly a testament of how much it would take to put this big green mug down. Embody all elements at once like he did, and use that to get the extra juice needed to get the job done with Man-Thing, which is also a very possibility considering Man-Thing is limited on his power resource compared to Swamp Thing. Yes, Man-Thing has the Nexus, but Swamp Thing can level up in other ways. Swamp Thing appears smarter than Man-Thing, while some might find it pointless since Man-Thing powers are his backbone. Brains will always come in handy when facing off against someone who uses very little of it. Who has fought way more stronger beings to prove themselves? I would say Swamp Thing. He fought Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Atrigon, and even Captain Atom. That roster alone shows he's got more might than Man-Thing will be able to take. Not to mention, Swamp Thing uses more elements of Earth than Man-Thing does, meaning he can use the environment on Earth to shaking the battle up a little bit, allowing Swamp Thing more arsenal at his disposal. Environment turf would come in handy in a fight for Swamp Thing, as he can probably control more of the environment to his favor if he was in a swamp, of course. He may even limit Man-Thing's powers during their brawl. One of the perks of no longer being full human is having certain traits removed, like fear, for instance. Swamp Thing doesn't actually have any emotional ties to fear, making him hollow to it. He can communicate with Mother Box technology, which means he could provide himself with a weapon of planet-busting magnitude when doing the dance with Man-Thing. Wildcard. Moment Man-Thing is known to read people who have suffered, and knowing he could sense Swamp Thing's tragic background, it might also get to him. As he went through similar events before. This might make Man-Thing attempt to go easy on Swamp Thing, which you never want to do, as he will put you in your place. Of course, you could argue Swamp Thing might sympathize with him, and there is some truth to that. So I'll leave this argument on maybe happening and not for certain. Okay, Swamp Thing was wiped out of the universe and came back. This impressive feat should show that his very end of this ordeal, Swamp Thing will last any attacks tossed at him, which will eventually overwhelm Man-Thing, allowing Swamp Thing to take his best shot, which might do the trick, ultimately leaving him with the W. But as always, no press fam, it's not up to me, it's up to you guys. So if you liked either one of my arguments, you know what you can do. You can hashtag Man-Thing or you can hashtag Swamp Thing. And as always, no press fam, we really appreciate you guys keeping it 800 subs. Peace.